Welcome, Tony.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's great to have you. Let's talk about people's feelings about money. It is complicated. It's often self-defeating.
Yeah.
What do you find that people get wrong when they think about what money means to them?
It's such a charged subject, you know, that people tie it into spirituality, good, bad, and I think the first thing you have to do is you got to get yourself in the game. I mean, you got to understand the game is still winnable. I think for most people, like you said, it's so complex, and frankly, the financial industry makes it complex. When a person with experience, as we all know, matches the person with money, the person with experience ends up with your money. So a lot of very financially astute people are not great investors. To be a great investor, you have to be able to make decisions without perfect knowledge. In your business, you have a lot of knowledge. You can make those decisions. You're in control. Not so much on the investment side. So the first step is not to wait till you have a huge sum of money, because the illusion is, when I have more money, then I'll invest, then it'll be worthwhile. The most important thing is get started with whatever you have. Because if you do that, you get to tap into the power of compounding we all know about, but very few people use. I'll give you an example, a guy named Theodore Johnson. You probably never heard of him. Worked for UPS. Never made more than $14,000 in an entire year of his life, and yet when he retired he had $70 million and he didn't inherit a dime. So how do you do that? A friend of his said, you've got to stop being a consumer and you've got to become an owner. You've got to become an investor. And he said, I have no money to invest. I make $14,000 a year. And his friend said, no one has the money to invest, but if the government came by and put a 20% tax above what you're paying now, you'd scream, you'd yell, and you'd pay it. You'd adjust. I'm going to make you a wealthy man. He took the 20% off the top, never let him see it, put it straight in the investment account. It was worth $70 million, compounding by the time he was in retirement. So people don't really get how powerful that is. You don't earn your way to a fortune. You invest your way, you compound it. Most people are trading time for money. And as an entrepreneur, that's the worst trade you can ever make. What I try to do is say, listen, whether you're an operator or owner, let's set up this business on the side, a financial business with no employees, that will be an extraordinary economic nest egg that brings you income for life, so you're free to do your business on your terms. But you've got to get started. The second thing is, you've really got to become an insider, as corny as that sounds. What you don't know will hurt you. And so I give you two simplistic things that most people probably have heard of, but they haven't applied. Almost everybody, when they go, where do I invest? Well, 90% of the population puts it through a 401k. 90% of those put it into a mutual fund. Makes sense. I'd go to someone who's going to manage my funds for me. They're going to make better decisions than if I just put the money in the market or in an index fund. It's just not true. 96% of all mutual funds fail to match the market over any 10-year period of time. I interviewed Nobel laureates. I've looked through the statistics. It's a fact. You go, I'm smart. I'm going to find the 4% that succeed. 96%, but I'm going to find the 4%. Do you play blackjack?
No, I don't.
If you watch it and somebody gets two face cards worth 20 and you can't go over 21, there's only one card you can get to go higher, it's an ace. Do you stay or ask hit me? Well, if your inner idiot says hit me, you have an 8% chance of getting that ace.
Yeah.
You have a 4% chance of finding the right mutual fund. so I tell people is, you don't want to go there. The other piece you got to understand is that fees do matter. Business owners have to understand something. The Department of Labor passed a new law just a few years ago that requires you and I as business owners, that if we have a 401k for our employees, we are the fiduciary. We are legally responsible. And we have to make sure every year we measure our 401k against the other ones to make sure it's one of the best, that we're not being overcharged for fees. 99.9% of business owners I speak to have no clue that they have this requirement to benchmark each year. They don't do it. The Department of Labor just hired 1,000 auditors, and those 1,000 auditors have found 70% of the people they audit are out of compliance, and the average fee to the owner is $600,000 in penalties. So when I saw this, I was like, this is crazy. I want to have the best thing for my employees. I thought I did. I had a big brand name. I brought in this company called America's Best 401k. They came in and said, we give the best possible, lowest cost, but access to the same exact stocks and bonds. And they started showing me that somebody's paying 1% in fees versus 3%. The average mutual fund, according to Forbes, is 3.1%. That difference is almost 50% of your earnings over time. In other words, two people could start out with the same money, $100,000, and they grow it at 7% for 30 years. And one of those people paying 1% is going to have almost $600,000, 100 to 600. That's the growth. To be specific, it's 500 to give you an idea, and 74,000. But the person that paid 3% in fees still got a 7% return. Same stock, same bonds, just a different environment. 3% fees, they got 324,000. So 40%, $250,000 is gone. For what? If I said to you that I want you to invest in something with me, Eric, here's what we want to do. I want you to put up all the money. I want you to take all the risk. I'm going to put up no money, take no risk. I win when you lose, and I win, you win. And when you win, I win up to 60% of all you're ever going to earn. You wouldn't invest in that in a million years, but that's 90% of all mutual funds. America's Best 401k came in, and we were paying almost 2.9% for my employees. and now we're paying 75 basis points. The difference between that is like buying a Honda Accord for $20,000 or paying $250,000 for the same exact product. So I partnered with them now, and that's another business that I'm involved with, America's Best 401k. And people can go to America's Best 401k as an owner. You can put in the name of your plan or have someone do it for you, and it'll tell you exactly what your fees are, and it'll show it. It'll give you a benchmark, so you have that for your file if you're ever audited. But also they can convert over for $1,000 if you want to convert to their format. So I'm a passionate man about these areas. So you got to get started, and you've got to become an insider, or you're going to get taken advantage of.
So don't try to beat the market. Be careful of the fees you pay. Now, one of the great things about your book is you encourage people to think about what their goal is. And what you often find is that you're actually already there, or what you thought was totally out of reach is within reach.
Yes.
So let's talk for a second about what real wealth means. What does it really mean, or what it ought it mean to people?
You've got to make that game winnable. And for most people, they don't start because it's so huge and it's way out there. And so what I try to do is say, let's have 3 different goals. Let's have a short-term, a medium, and a long-term goal. It doesn't sound very unique, but here's what's unique about it. I ask people, let's make the first goal what I would call financial security. Not absolute financial independence, but where you're secure financially. And I define that as when you have 5 things paid for without working, meaning your investments have grown enough that the income off your investments without you working pays for these 5 things. And those 5 things are your mortgage, so you never have to pay for your house again, utilities, your transportation, your food for you and your family, and your basic insurance. When I ask most people, how would you feel if all 5 of those things were paid for without working? They go, oh, that'd be incredible. Well, that number is usually about 60% less than the number someone's going to quote you to be, quote, independent financially. And here's what's interesting. If you're a baby boomer, and you built your business and you took a hit in 2008 and you didn't get back in the market and you're like, how am I ever going to do this? You might not get to financial independence where you never work again and have the same lifestyle as today. But you can get financial security for sure. And here's what I found. There was a study done by Shell of all their employees. It's reported in the British Medical Journal. If you retire at 55, like the old idea was, I'm going to get rich and retire when I'm 50 or 40. Almost nobody I know does that anymore. Steve Wynn is 73. I'm just with some friends of mine that one of them is a very wealthy man and he's 79, and they're working harder today than ever before, because if you retire at 55, you have an 89% chance of dying within 10 years, more than if you just retire at 65, which makes no sense. Wow. It's because we need work as a sense of purpose. So I tell people financial independence is not working. It'll make you crazy. It's knowing you don't have to work. And what I try to do is I show people how to get to that exact number, and that number is much closer than you think.
Talk about financial independence. There you've talked about 5% returns, 20 multiply your needs by 20 times. How does that work?
Well, I was just reading USA Today last week. They had an article that said, in order to calculate how much money you'll need for retirement, take 8 times your income. That is like a statistic that came from 20 years ago when they used to say 10 times your income. Think about this. If you make $100,000 a year, and I'll use that for simple math, 10 times your income will be $1 million. Well, if my $1 million nest egg is supposed to last me my retirement, and where are you going to get a 10% return to make 100 grand a year? Where are you going to find that in a secure environment, the world we're in? There's just no way. So I tell people, security is smaller. The next goal is independence. Independence is I don't have to work and I get the same lifestyle I have today. That's 20 times your income. Why? 100,000 times 20, a couple $1 million, times 5%. That's a range you can still find investments in and get a nice return on that's really reasonable and real and sustainable. And so that's where I use that formula.
Okay, and you'll draw some of that down too. You don't have
of course you will.
Make
but
5%
the 4% formula, as most of us know, doesn't really work so well today with the types of returns that most people are seeing.
Your own relationship with money is complicated and changed a lot over your life. You grew up poor. Tell us how that influenced your thinking about money.
When I was growing up, I had 4 different fathers. We were always broke. I couldn't understand why we had no money for food at Thanksgiving. And so I think a huge part of my drive to do well, it's like I promised I would never have a child until I was financially secure and independent. And then, of course, life messes with you, and I had a child on the way. And so, interestingly, I went from making $38,000 a year to making $1 million the next year. That jump wasn't like a sudden new skill set. It was just a must for me psychologically to produce that wealth. And I've developed strategies and insights, and then I stayed at the same kind of $1 million a year income for like 7 straight years, even though I built 4 or 5 different companies. I was adding more value, but my income didn't go up because in my head, well, if you want more than $1 million a year, you're a total jerk. You know, what's wrong with you? But I was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Radisson Hotel on my birthday looking at this, the man who owned it, he was a hunter and he killed these animals and they were on the wall and was a vegetarian at the time. And I was thinking, my kids, my housekeeper, I've called her back to my house, speak to my kids, and she's like, Mr. Robbins, I'm so happy I live in this castle. I had a home that was built from castles in Europe and overlooking the ocean. And I was loving your jacuzzi last night. It was so wonderful looking down on the ocean. And I was just in your workout room, and I was watching Oprah on your Stairmaster. And she goes, I've lost 20 pounds. And I thought, this woman has a great lifestyle. I went to Radisson Inn back in those days. So I thought to myself, you know what, if you could be smarter, should you? If you could be more giving, should you? If you could be anything, it's more, should you? And the answer is yes. So if you could be more financially wealthy, why wouldn't you? When the formula for wealth is do more for others than anybody else does. That's the only way to sustain it. You can get rich by screwing somebody, but if you're going to stay rich, you have to constantly help people. If you help millions of people, you're going to do extremely well. But as the years went by, I realized that my ideas were going to die on my lips unless I became a good businessman, and I had to really understand business and marketing, and I wanted to help people with their lives, and entrepreneurs are my primary clients. So, when I got Steve Wynn as a dear friend, and I got Mark Benioff from Salesforce, a dear friend, and he goes from 0 to 5 billion, it influenced me. And so now I have a dozen companies I actively run, about 22 companies in total, and we have sales of over $5 billion. And for me to say that, it's like blows my own mind, because it was never my goal, but it's grown to that. And the enterprises are very diverse, from hospitality to education to financial services, you name it.
Every entrepreneur has an aha moment. Was that yours there in the Milwaukee Radisson?
That was, I don't know if that was my entrepreneurial aha moment. It was a quality of life aha moment. I think my aha moments around being an entrepreneur is when I realized that I was such a business operator and not an owner, that I was doing everything. And I think this is the trap most entrepreneurs get into, because it required me, and I'm such a perfectionist. I wanted to do everything. I couldn't get anybody else to do it because it wouldn't be done well enough. And the day that I realized that I'm never going to have the impact in this world that I want if I do it all, I have to be more like a Richard Branson, where I can bring in the very best people, be a strategist, and then turn them loose and really believe and engage and empower them. And that's really what changed my life. That's when I started growing my businesses at a whole different level, as opposed to have to do it all myself.
Now, you've coached some of the greatest entrepreneurs of our time, including Branson, Mark Benioff.
Yes.
What sets them apart?
Hunger. Anybody can get hungry when you're hungry, you haven't eaten something, or hungry because you've had a bad situation, you want a great relationship because you feel alone. But the best on earth never lose that hunger. They're hungry to learn, they're hungry to grow, they're hungry to give, they're hungry to grow, they're hungry to contribute. And that hunger, it's more important than intelligence. As important as intelligence is, there are a lot of smart people who can't fight their way out of a paper bag or don't have the energy to do it. I'm telling you, there's nothing that's going to stop a person that's hungry enough. Because a hungry person, failure doesn't stop them. They don't look at it as failure. They go, okay, it's a learning experience, what's next? But that driving force, I think, is the greatest gift. And I'm blessed to have that hunger be alive more today than when I started the journey when I was 17 years old. So I'm like, I don't have to work, fortunately, a day of my life. And my wife tries to remind me of that all the time. And I go, but she goes, you do more now than you did 20 years ago. Of course I do more now. I'm capable of more now. But that's because that hunger hasn't gone away.
What's the biggest blind spot for people like that?
I think when you succeed, most entrepreneurs go through stages. There's stages of development in a human being's life. There's stages of development in an entrepreneur's life. And if you think of it as like in the beginning of business as a toddler, it takes a lot of energy and it doesn't give back much except a lot of pride of ownership, like your child. It gets into a lot of trouble. As you get more people, they can make mistakes and mess it up. When you hit teenager is when cash flow is no longer a problem. The business is rocking, and the experience, I've experienced it myself, I've been guilty of this, and most entrepreneurs I've seen, you think you're a total genius because everything you touch turns to gold for a while. And what's the worst thing happens? Go to Vegas, win, because then you're going to come back. What's the worst thing with a teenager if they drive 100 miles an hour is not get hurt, because they're going to do it and someday maybe die. So businessmen that survive usually hit a wall where they realize, I have no systems, I have nothing in place, all of a sudden sales aren't quite as big as they were, and cash flow that hides a lot of problems disappears, and they have to find a way to survive. They have to get to young adult. They have to decide what they're not going to do. They have to decide what systems they're going to put in place, and then eventually get to your prime where you're able to have both the systems and the growth together, and where you've got a team that does it, isn't just you, and then you're really the business owner, not just the operator. That's when freedom comes, by the way.
Explain that.
Well, most people got into business because they wanted to have more freedom. They wanted to do things on their own terms. And I said, more free time is, how's that working for you? It's like saying I want to have a child, so I can have more free time. Having a business is like having a child. But when you do grow your business through these stages, and I teach these, and you get to what I call prime, that place where it's not just you, there's a team and it's growing and there's innovation and there's controls, you have both. then you don't have one of those go gone things. You have something that's sustainable over decades, or business can last centuries, as you well know. So that focus is where I think freedom comes, when you no longer are the source of it, but you're strategically able to direct it. That's what guys like Richard Branson have.
Best piece of advice you have ever given?
Given? Well, you'd have to ask the people that. I'll tell you what I've received, because I'm big on getting advice at all stages from very smart people. I'd say two things. One is, find your passion and find a way to use it to do more for others than anybody else does. My original teacher, Jim Rohn, taught me, he said, Tony, if you really want to be wealthy and you understand why your father worked as hard as he did and didn't do well, you got to know you can make 10 times as much money in the same time, 100 times, 1,000,000 times, but only if you find a way to add that much more value. If you work at McDonald's, you're going to get $7 an hour, $8 an hour. If you're Tepper, who last year, a hedge fund man, made $3.5 billion, well, that's totally unfair. It is unfair on the surface, but in a world where people are getting 33 basis points in the bank, here's a man who are 3% on a bond. He gave people 42%. What that does to change the life of those individuals or organizations is mind-boggling. So he was rewarded disproportionately because he added disproportionate value. So find a way to add more value is number one. Number two was proximity is power. That if you want to get the job done, you must get in the environment of the best of the best. And that things will happen if you're just in the environment where you add enough value. So a multi-billionaire taught me this. He was asking me some questions I had, and he said, Tony, if you wanted to make a movie, it'd be easy. And this is before I made that silly movie, Shallow Hal. He said, you've been in like 25, 30 movies. I see a piece of you. And he said, I know why. Everybody in the entertainment business, you have so many clients, directors, producers, actors, and so they're around you and they want to include you in what they're doing. I'm not asking for it. He said, if you want to do a deal with IBM, you'd be screwed. Because you don't know anybody IBM. You're not around anybody IBM. It's possible, but it'd take a lot of work. He said, for the goals you have, you need to spend more time with investment bankers. I said, but I don't have a clear plan what I want to do yet. He goes, it doesn't matter. They want to be around you. Go take them to lunch. Be around them. I did that for a couple of years where it seemingly produced no result, like other than nice friendships was wonderful, but no business result. And then one day, one of those relationships grew into a deal that made me $400 million, literally in a day. We took the company public. And it was like, I could work my entire lifetime to not make that happen. I had to be in proximity with the best. And so my own growth has been always challenging myself to be around people that play the game of life at a higher level. So that in order to stay on the court with them, you got to lift your game, you got to grow. And also being around them and adding value, then you find opportunity. Proximity is power.
All right, well, you're around a lot of people. The competition around guys like that to add value is pretty steep.
Yes, it is.
So you wouldn't tell me before, or you wouldn't arrogate to yourself the best advice you've ever given. But what is it you do? How do you make sure that you add value and constantly add more value?
I'm always working on myself. I'm always looking for new tools, new strategies to get a result quicker, better, faster, more elegantly. But B is, I'm really good, because I've done this for a lifetime, 37 years now. Started when I was 2, I think. But 37 years of doing this, you could be an idiot if you're around as many people I've been around with as highest standards I have. You have to start to learn that there are patterns in people, patterns that make them succeed and patterns that make them fail. So what I do really well is I'm able to find out what drives this person, not some cookie cutter. And once I know what drives them, I can align their drives with what they want to accomplish, or I can find what the conflict is. I'm really in the breakthrough business. I help people find a way to break through from where they are to where they want to be fast. So I get the phone call when Serena Williams is burning down on national television and I need to be turned around now. And I'm able to do it, and so that makes my reputation grow. When the child is suicidal, or the adult, and knock on wood, if you have some somewhere here, haven't lost one out of the thousands I've done. We've made films, dozens of them. We train psychiatrists and psychologists around the world. I've trained 100,000 of the techniques and showing people the intervention, they don't commit suicide, and here they are 5 years later, they're totally fine. So I'm really proud of that. Doesn't mean I won't eventually lose somebody, but I haven't. I've also had, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton, call me and say, they're going to impeach me in the morning. What should I do? And my first response is, could you call me sooner? It's like tomorrow morning. But because I've been put in those environments, I've learned very quickly how to get inside somebody's brain, figure out what limits them, break that through, and move them on so that they are no longer in their own way, or they're able to maximize their performance. And that's when people come to me. They come to me because they're hungry, either because that's their nature, they're the best in the world at what they do, and they're always looking for the edge, so they seek me out, or they have a problem. Something happens and they lost their mojo. They're going in a slump. The economics aren't going there, and I got to come in and help them turn it around right now. Because I've been able to do that for so many high-level players for, more than 35 years. I pretty much the first person usually gets the call in most cases, not all, but many.
Every entrepreneur has a team that they have to
Yes.
inspire, they have to lead. Not everyone was born to that. A lot of them became entrepreneurs because they were the best coder in the room or the best salesman. Give me 5 things that allow an entrepreneur to come into a room and command it the way you do.
It's not that simple. I think you have to first understand what are the needs of the people in that room and what is the vision that you're bringing. If you don't have a vision larger than yourself, if it's only what you want to accomplish and you're going to try and command the room, that's completely selfish and you're not going to be able to touch people's lives. What I do is I go in, it's just like the same thing with public speaking. A lot of entrepreneurs go, how do I get in front of the room and speak? You stop thinking about yourself. Because as long as you think about yourself, how am I doing well or not, then all of a sudden you're filled with stress and you're disconnected from the audience. But if I'm looking out here and my entire focus is what are they feeling, what are they experiencing, how do I serve them, how do I get them where they need to go, then insights come to you. I always tell people motive does matter. If your motivation is to control the room, well, then you're going to feel like a manipulator and you're not going to control or shape that room. But if your motivation truly, your motive doesn't matter, it's truly to serve, it's to do something that's higher than just you. You can benefit, but higher than just yourself. I believe life supports what supports more of life, and insights and freedom and things come into you. Like, how would I come up with this stuff? The stuff that I've come up with during my life, I'm like, where does this come from? It comes from that intent being so pure to serve that I'm supported with the insights that are necessary. So you have to know what your vision is. It's got to be larger than you. If you're an entrepreneur and you're building this business just to make money for yourself, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're going to be an amateur entrepreneur. You're going to do very little business. If you're looking to see how I can change the quality of life for people in some area, business life, whatever, and you want to do the same thing for your employees, you're going to be an inspirational character because you're so rare. Because most people are trying to figure out, what can I get out of you? It's so rare to have somebody who authentically is trying to give to you. In fact, people don't trust it at first. But if you are consistent, eventually they go, holy cow, this is real. You know, I didn't believe it, but it's real. That's what happens in my business. People go, oh, it's pump up, it's, you know, an infomercial guy, it's all the stuff, you know, this stuff. And they come and they're with me for 12 hours in a day, 2 or 3 days in a row. And they go, nobody on earth gives more than this guy. Oh my God, this guy's the real thing. And so that built my brand. So you build your brand not by marketing, because in the world we live in today, good news travels fast, bad news travels faster. So if you're not authentic, you have no choice. So what's your vision? What's your authentic mission of what you want to serve? Who's in that room and what do they need and want? And how do I align what they need and want with this vision? I think those would be 3 first steps that I'd give any entrepreneur.
Come up with a name. Give me a name of someone that I don't know, and most of the viewers of this video don't know, who's really inspired you.
God, there's so many. First one pops in my head is Ashley Moser, young woman who was in Aurora, Colorado, the day that that insane shooter came into the Batman shooting and killed everybody. Her boyfriend fled and left her there. She's pregnant with her 6-year-old daughter. The shooter shot and killed her 6-year-old daughter right in front of her, then shot her in the stomach deliberately. And she survived, but she lost her unborn child, she lost her daughter, she's a quadriplegic. She was suicidal when I first met her. I flew her and her team out and I put her through this event. She didn't think she could even sit through it. And it transformed her, and to her credit, she's taken these tools to a different level. She's now partnered with me. I brought her back here, you know, to Newtown to work with some of the families there that lost their young ones there, because they've all lost young ones. She lost both of them, witnessed it, and she's quadriplegic. She's just now learning to drive again. And to see someone like that, and I could name dozens of people like that because I seek them out, because I want to help. Because I find when a person has been through hell, when someone's been through what I would call spiritual pain, more than physical, when it feels like life itself has just abandoned you, and they make it through to the other side, they become a force for good that, you know, I can tell you all day, oh, you can get through it. I get Ashley here to tell you can get through your little problem. You look at her and you go, I have no problems compared to her. You know, I'm cured right now. So people like that have been through hell and have found a way to give back, they inspire the hell out of me, and I do everything I can to support them.
Now you have a book about money. You're famous for personal development, unleashing the power within, and also a great coach for entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And now you've moved into a field of personal finance, talking about 401ks and saving rates and equity index annuities.
Yes.
How come?
Well, if you look at people's lives, I've been dedicated for 37 years to helping people create breakthroughs. And really my focus is, how do you create an extraordinary quality of life? I think most people become an entrepreneur because they say, I want to live life on my terms and I want to create something and bring something of value to the world. But if you look at the areas of your life that really affect the quality of your life, so a few areas that really make a big difference: your body, you know, the energy, the level, your level of health, your relationships, especially your intimate relationships, your career, and then money. And so I've taught money for many years, but I haven't made it my primary focus. I've done it in seminars. But what shifted me was 2008. I grew up dirt poor, so when people started losing their homes en masse, they're losing half of what they'd earned in a lifetime, it wasn't a statistic for me, and I felt pain for people, and people are calling me saying, what do I do? And I thought the government's going to do something. And I saw this documentary called Inside Job. Did you see it?
Yes, I saw it. Great.
What did you feel at the end of that film?
Anger.
Yeah, that was my feeling too.
Yeah.
I mean, because there were no solutions. So what I thought is, after watching that film, I said, you know what, I'm not everybody, but I have a unique gift, and that is access. Most people don't know it, but I've been coaching a man named Paul Tudor Jones, who's one of the top 10 financial traders literally in the history of the world. And I've coached him for 21 straight years. And daily he's communicated with me through email, and then I see him in person. And so he's made money every year for 21 years. I mean, there's nobody in his size or scope that's done that. And so I thought, with what I know from Paul, what if I interviewed 50 of the smartest financial minds literally on earth and got them to boil down the essence of what they do and put it into a system that I could help an entrepreneur say, okay, I'm building my business, but I should have a business on the side with no employees called my investments that's going to bring me an income for life on top of what I'm doing. And then I started studying also, how business people can use ESOPs and things of that nature to really create financial wealth for themselves and their employees even sooner, even when they're small businesses. So all that evolved into this book. It took me 4 years to do it. I don't like writing books. I haven't written a book in 20 years. But then I wanted to make sure that it not only benefited the individuals who read it, but also I was fed when I was 11 years old. When our family had no money at Thanksgiving. Started out feeding 2, and then 4, then 1 million, eventually 4 million people a year. So I fed 42 million people in my life, but I thought, you know what? What if I donate all the profits of this book in advance, not if it sells? And then I found I could feed 10 million people, and then I just added to that. So this year I'm personally feeding 50 million people and providing matching funds to feed 100 million people. So people pick up the book, they'll not only change their own life, but they'll help other people as well. We live in a country where it blows my mind, 49 million people every night go to sleep not knowing if they're going to have a meal the next day, including 17 million children. And it's the richest country in the world. So I wanted to touch on helping individuals become more wealthy, but also help those that are barely surviving to be taken care of and to be noticed and hopefully bring attention to it.
Tony, tell me how it works. How do you feed 10 million people with this book?
Well, it's 50 million. 50. Actually, we already have matching funds to 71 million right now. And I did it through Feeding America. They're the #1 hunger relief organization in the United States. And I negotiated a deal so all the money is really going to the food. I just wrote a large check, quite frankly, in advance. But then I've utilized the money I put as matching funds, and that's how I've gotten up to 71 million.